Alrighty, in the last video we left off, we were discussing example number 4, and we kind of it's basic mathematics. If you're not familiar with the video, go watch the video before, and then once you're familiar, come back to this one. But I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the last video, but marginal cost, your book mentions marginal cost. And let me pull out the paragraph. And I'm going to read the paragraph from the book. In economics, marginal cost is the rate of change of cost C of x at a level of production x and is equal to the slope of the cost function at x. Now, you can read the rest of the paragraph. You don't really need to. It's basically summarizing those two sentences, which is the marginal cost is the rate of change. So the rate of change is the rise over run. And we know that the rate of change is another name for the slope. The slope is the rate of change, the rise over run, marginal cost. They all mean the same thing. M is the variable that is used to represent slope. Y equals mx plus b, slope intercept. So that's basically what it's saying. It's saying marginal cost is, and actually it tells us this. It says in the second part, is equal to the slope of the cost function at x. So basically saying c of x. The marginal cost is the slope of the function c of x. And as we know, c of x equals y. It's another name. F of x equals y. It's another name. C of x equals y. Y equals mx plus b. C equals mx plus b. Different names, same concept. So, just decided to review this. I don't know if I went over this in the last video, so I decided to review this a little bit this video. But now that we have this out of the way, marginal cost is the slope. It's just a different name. We're just adding more names to stuff. That's all. All right, so now we can actually tackle example number 5. Let me actually read example number 5 to you. Let me pull it out. The marginal cost to make X batches of a prescription medication is $10 per batch, while the cost to produce 100 batches is $1,500. Find the cost function, C of x, given that it is linear. Well, what are we finding? First off, what are we finding? What's our end goal? Well, it says right there, find the cost function C of x given that it is linear. It's basically saying the function is linear. It's a linear function. And if it's telling us find the linear function C of x, well, we know that linear function y is equal to mx plus b, slope intercept form. And we know that C of x is equal to y. They have, different names, same concept. Excuse me. So it is safe to say that we can assume that the linear function C of x, since C of x is equal to y, and the linear function y equals mx plus b, that's a linear function. So if C of x is equal to y, we can assume that the linear function C of x is just C of x equals mx plus b. Now, they throw a lot of information at us, and one of the things that we can do is we can actually write down all the information we have and kind of organize it to see where we need to go, which direction we need to go, because this question is a little more, there's more to it than what meets the eye. And I'll explain why in a little bit. So the book says the marginal cost to make X batches of a prescription is $10 per batch. So the marginal cost is $10 per batch. And I actually have a little side note right here. I made a mistake in one of my other videos. I mentioned that per is always dividing, think dividing. That was a mistake on my end. It can also mean multiplying. $10 per batch multiplication. You know, if it's $10 per pizza and you need to buy 3 pizzas, then, you know, 10 times 3, $30. You're going to end up paying $30 for those 3 pizzas. So it kind of just depends on the situation. Right now it's telling us it's the slope, and the slope is always m times x, which is why I'm saying 10 per batch. So my mistake for that. I'm sorry if I confused you, but just if you see per, you know, think division or multiplication and kind of pay attention to which one you might use. This one, they're calling for the slope, meaning that it's you're gonna, you know, that a slope is always m times x. So, you know, you kind of just assume, you know, m times x. Oh, here better. M times x, $10 per batch. You know, kind of like that rhythm, you know, m times x, $10 per batch. So I hope that makes sense. Sorry about that. All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going. So they actually give us a interesting information. They give us, instead of giving us b, the fixed cost, they actually go ahead and give us a value for x. So actually, so remember, the marginal cost is $10 per batch, meaning that it's 10x. So if we were to write that down, let's write down what we actually know. Or actually, I wrote that down. So slope is 10x. They actually give us a value. They give us a cost to produce 100 cookies. The cost to produce 100 batches is $1,500. So they already give us the cost to produce 100 batches. So remember, it's forgive me. 100 batches is $1,500. So they gave us the slope, they gave us an x value, that's an x value, and they gave us a y value, a c of x. And they're telling us to find, they're basically saying, what's the fixed cost? You know, we want to write down the formula. We want to use the formula C equals, I'm running out of ink, mx plus b. And we have c, we have x, we have m, we just need b. Now that's pretty simple, you know, just plug in everything you need and that's it, you're done. You know, we have c of x, we have x, we have slope, plug it in, you're done, right? Right? No, you can't. Why? Because b is the y-intercept when x equals 0. Remember, however, it kept repeating that, I kept putting that in your head. B is the y-intercept when x equals 0. So, and since c of x is equal to y, b is the x-intercept when c of x is equals to 0. That's a little more complicated. They're giving us the value of 100. They're saying you need to play with this value that we gave you. So you can't really just ignore this and just put in a 0 and then just find b. Because it's kind of like restrictions. They're telling you, we want you to find this formula, but you need to use these numbers I'm giving you. You can't just say, okay, this, get rid of it, it's 0, and then have c of x equals to b. No. So you're going to have to rack up your brain a little bit and kind of think outside the box. I'm not really sure if you went over this in another class, but there is a different linear function that they teach you besides y equals mx plus b. Excuse me. The cheese strikes again. I love cheese. I can't eat it, but it's a love-hate relationship. I love it, it hates me. So you are gonna use a linear function called point-intercept form. And I don't know if your professor actually went over this. I'm pretty sure that, I mean, they kind of needed to if you're gonna do this example. It'd be kind of mean of them to like not tell you this. But you're gonna have to use point-intercept form, which is, y minus y1 is equal to the slope multiplied by x, parentheses, x minus x1. So let's look at that again. Y minus, point-intercept form is y minus y1 is equal to the slope m times, parentheses, x minus x1, and then close parentheses, obviously. So they gave us this way, they already gave us a y and an x value. They already gave us a y and an x value. So in that way, they kind of already gave us coordinate points. And because I'm getting like a little phone call, but I can't answer that. I'm in a video. So they already gave us an x and a y value. You can think of that like coordinate points. And then once you think coordinate points, I hope that kind of ignites a little electrical highway in your brain that makes you kind of think, okay, they're giving us coordinates already. They're telling us to look for the constant b. And they're already giving us x and y values, coordinates. So maybe we're going to use a different linear function. Maybe we need to use point-intercept form first, and then convert that into a y equals mx plus b. I wish there was like a meaning or like a type of analogy or story that I can tell you to help you remember point-intercept form and like why we need to use it at this instance. But unfortunately, I can't really think of any without going into like details, which I don't want to do. So the only thing I can really say right now is just look out for the values. If you notice, we've been jotting down all the values they give us on the side, and kind of, also jotting down what they want from us. So just kind of look at the information they give you, what you're working with, and kind of just figure out, okay, they give me y, and then they give me the slope, and then they give me the constant, and they want me to find x. Well, that's easy, just plug it in. Okay, so they gave me x, they gave me y, they gave me the slope. They want me to find this formula. Okay, but that's weird. They gave me a value for x, so I can't really just, I can't just solve this equation, because remember, b is the y-intercept when x equals 0. Okay, so maybe there's another linear function. Oh, point-intercept form. I remember that. It's kind of just brute memorization, I'm sorry about that. But anyways, so yeah, now that we have a different tool to work with, because this will eventually turn into this. We just need to work a little magic on it. So we have the tool that we're going to use, and we have the information that they give us, and what we need to find. So let's start. Let's plug it in. Side note, again, always, y of x, y equals f of x, y equals c of x. Different names, same concept. So we can put c of x minus y1 equals m times parentheses x minus x1 parentheses. Alrighty, so now that we have all the information, they just plug it in. We know what y is, 2,500. We know what x is, it's 100. Well, we know one of the x's. We know x We know x1, y1. So we know y1, it's 1,500. We know x1, it's 100 right here. We know the slope, it's 10. And they told us this. In the question they told us, they said, where is it? Here we go. The marginal cost to make X batches of a prescription medication is $10 per batch. So we know the slope. It's $10 per batch, 10x. The cost to produce 100 batches, so we know the batches, they're 100, is 1,500. So we know the cost, C of X, which is also Y, 1,500. We plug it in, boom, boom. And at this point, it just kind of just becomes a basic math problem, you know, kind of just working with the numbers to, you know, get it to this equation, kind of have like, you know, make this isolated, you know, get everything to this side and make this isolated. And it's just, you know, just to go over the basic math, you know, it's you distribute the 10 to the 10x and to the 100. So you have 10x minus 1,000. And then you add 1,500 on both sides. So you're left with C of X is equals to 10x plus 500, which is actually the linear function that we need, the slope-intercept form. So that one was kind of a doozy. This wasn't difficult. This isn't difficult. You know, it's just kind of getting this info and plugging it in here and just kind of solving, you know, the equation. Just basic math at that point, you know, just distributing, multiplying, you know, adding, all that type of stuff. The hardest part is getting to here. Having to realize, okay, I need to use this. And the only way, unfortunately, like I said, the only way is kind of brute memorization. It's kind of just typical, you know, it's kind of just you need to really memorize and hammer down, you know, I would say this technique of writing down all the info that you're given and the technique of writing down what you need and kind of just, you know, figuring out with the information I have, what can I do with it? And majority of it, you know, the reason why this example is taking a lot of time is because the majority of it is kind of brute memorization. You know, C of X is equal to Y, Y is equal to F of X, you know. Point slope form can be played around to turn into that. It's kind of, you just need to memorize all of that. So I'm sorry about that. But hopefully when you memorize it, it should be like 10 times, 20 times, you know. I keep mentioning the language, you know, at first when you listen into a language or you're trying to read a language, it's like I don't even know where to start. But once you start learning some of the words, you start recognizing a little bit about the vocabulary. You know, $10 per batch, that should automatically raise flags. $10 per batch, okay, 10x. You know, the cost to produce 100 batches, okay, so it's $10 per batch, so it's 10x. So a batch, you know, X must be a batch. So it's telling us we have 100 batches. So 100X. X equals 100. It's kind of just, you know, just playing around with that. All right, rant over. We have a lot. We still have one more example to go over. So rant over, but this example should be a lot quicker. So right here, example 6, I'm going to read it. A company has fixed cost of $12,500. The total cost to produce 1,000 widgets is $13,260. Parentheses. A widget is a term often used by economists to refer to an abstract unit of production. Find the cost function C of X given that it is linear. Okay, so it's basically asking the same thing as example 5. Find the cost function of C of X. So we, you know, given that it is linear. Okay, so that kind of just automatically knows. And actually, I'm going to use I'm gonna like kind of introduce to you what I mean by like you pick up certain languages, you pick up certain vocabulary, and that kind of just sticks with you. And the next time you read it, you just start picking it up automatically. So find the cost function c of x given that it is linear. Well, in the previous question, it asked the same thing. Find the cost function c of x given that it is linear. Well, we knew that a linear function c of x is just the same thing as the linear function y equals mx plus b, slope-intercept form. So given that in the last example, we already know that, we apply it, we learned a new language. We learned when it says find the cost function c of x given that it is linear, from the last example, we learned that just literally means it's asking you find the linear function c of x equals to mx plus b. So we can apply that to this one, and we can automatically say, okay, in this example, they want us to find the linear function c of x equals to mx plus b. What else does it say? A company has fixed cost. Well, that should automatically raise a red flag or alert, alert. Fixed cost, what do we say that was? A fixed cost is the same as b. It's a constant. The y-intercept on x equals 0. They all mean the same thing. So we automatically put that down. Fixed cost is 12,500. That's b. And what else did they say? The total cost to produce 1,000 widgets. And it says right there, widget is often used by economists to refer to an abstract unit of production. It's kind of it's saying like widget is basically like stuff. 1,000 to produce 1,000 stuff. It's just kind of a filler. You don't really know what it is. It's kind of a filler word. It's kind of like calling something a thing. What's that thing? What's that widget? So the total cost to produce 1,000 widgets is 13,260. So the total cost, they already gave you the cost, c of x. That's the total cost, 13,260. And those are red flags. When you hear fixed cost, you should think, okay, they're going to give me a value for the constant. They're going to give me a value for b. When you hear total cost, you should think c of x. Okay, they're going to give me a value for c of x, which is 13,260. And then the cost to produce 1,000 widgets. So they're telling you can produce 1,000 items. That's your x. And you're probably thinking, okay, why isn't that your m? Because remember, slope is your rate of change. It's the rate at which it's cost per item. Remember back in the old example, the video game example, it was $12. The cost per item was $12 per video game. Notice how there is no per in this example. Not once did I mention a per. In the example before, and I sound like a cat, per. In the example above, example number 5, they told us medication is $10 per batch. So that automatically, the per batch, that should have raised the marginal cost that they told us, and the per batch should have automatically raised the flags. Okay, per batch. They're talking about slope. They're talking about m. So they're going to give me a value for m. But if you notice, in this example, and that goes back to the language, you don't see the word per at all in this sentence. And I'm just double checking to make sure. I don't want to tell you something and then find it later. No, see, you don't find a per, meaning they don't give you a slope. They give you your fixed cost, your b. They give you total cost, $13 total cost, your y, or your c of x. And they give you how much items can be produced from this cost. You can produce 1,000 items from this cost, but they don't tell you how much it costs per item. Ah, so that means what's missing? M is missing. We don't know M. I put it right there, actually. So we get the values that we know. We plug it in. Remember the machine. We plug in the values we know, and it pumps out a value that we don't know. In this case, we wanted to pump out M. So what do? Let me see if I have the other example. Yeah, it's on this side. So what do? First off, we set it equal to, we write it down, C of x equals to mx plus b. I always like to write down the formula. And then we just plug in information, you know? We already know the total cost, 13,260. We already know that with that total cost, we can produce 1,000 widgets. With a total cost of 13,260, we can produce 1,000 widgets. So we know X. And they told us the fixed cost. The fixed cost is going to be 12,500. So at this point, it's just basically doing math. You subtract 12,500 from both sides. You divide 1,000 M. I just switched them around. You know, M times 1,000, 1,000 times M. You just switched it. You divide by 1,000, and it gives you M. You plug in your information to the machine, and it spits out the value that you don't know. It pumps out the value that you don't know, which is 0.76. So now we know our slope. So now we have our, we have our slope and we have our fixed cost. We have our slope and we have our intercept. So now we can create the slope-intercept form. Y equals 0.76, our slope that we found. Y equals 0.76x plus our fixed cost that they told us, 12,500. And remember, y is equal to f of x. C of x is equal to y. Different names, same concept. So finally, we can say C of x is equal to 0.76x plus 12,500. C of x is the same thing as y. The fixed cost, I mean, they gave us the fixed cost from the beginning of the problem. And then we found the slope. So we have everything we need to create the linear function, and we did. So I hope that makes more sense or I hope you're starting to get kind of the way of thinking of, you know, recognizing certain words and kind of just repeating them. You know, for example, in Spanish, you know, there's I always make these videos when I'm hungry, so I just like think of food. So I think, you know, hamburguesa, you know, that means hamburger in Spanish. You don't know that that means hamburger, but someone comes up to you and they tells you, hey, you know, hamburger in Spanish is hamburguesa. Oh, thanks. So now when you go to a restaurant, you see on the menu hamburguesa, you just kind of know. You're just like, oh, hey, I know that word. It means hamburger. It's the same thing here. Fixed cost, hey, I know that word. In English language, fixed cost is the B. I should switch it. In English, it's called fixed cost. In the language of math, it's called B. Hey, I know that. Cost per item. Hey, I know that word. In English, cost per item is cost per item. But in mathematics, that actually means the slope. It means M. And just that type of thinking. So I hope that helps. I said these videos were going to be kind of short, but this was like, I wanted to give a little bit of tips on like how to look at these problems, how to like tackle them and all that type of stuff. So I hope this helps, and keep doing what you're doing.